Good afternoon. Can you hear me down south? Any kind of a shade?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Nova Murray. I'm the Deputy Administrator for Welfare. Our agency will ultimately be getting the recommendation from this committee, so we put together the binders for everybody to get started with something, and I will go ahead and start with roll call to make sure that we have everybody here. Oh, I guess I have to wear glasses to do that. So Kathleen Baker. Present. Karen Cliff.
Present.
Ellen Crecelius. Patricia Farley. Ozzie Fumo.
This is Assemblyman Tyrone Thompson. I'm in his stead today.
Thank you. Charles Hoskin.
I am present.
Nova Murray. I'm present. Do I have to do that? Keith Pickard.
Here.
Bridget Rupp.
Here.
Michael Roberson.
Here.
Is it Joseph Sanford?
Here.
Jim Shirley?
Here.
Lydia Stiglich? Here. Kim Surratt?
Here.
And Don Throne?
Here.
Thank you. For the record, everyone is present except Patricia Farley, and Tyrone Thompson is in Ozzie Fumo's stead. At this time, we'll call for public comment. If anybody has any public comment in the South, please come forward. I assume there's a bench there, or whatever you call that.
There is, and there's no one here.
Perfect. In the North, do we have any public comment? Perfect. So the one thing on the agenda here, we have the committee charge and the administrator directive. This directive just comes from Steve Fisher explaining what a guideline is and where it comes from. I don't know that I really need to read it, but it does explain that guidelines are basically the formula for calculating child support. They wouldn't be like enforcement remedies, pieces of information like that. And if this committee at some point decides to do something that has nothing to do with the formula, that wouldn't go through Steve, the administrator for welfare. Those types of things somebody would have to sponsor and come through session to change them in NRS. So we just wanted to make sure that was clear on what we're really here to do, and that is to create the formula for calculating child support. And with that, I'm asking David Castagnola to come up and give us a basic introduction to the guideline review that was already completed by the Center for Policy Research. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As Nova said, my name is David Castagnola. I'm a program specialist in the Child Support Program for the Welfare Division. My comments and my purpose of being here today are to introduce three key information reference materials in your binders, and the agenda items that have my name on them, 4 and 5, overlap, so I might be speaking a little bit out of order, but I'm covering both of them. As way of a background, the Federal Social Security Act mandates, as a condition of having an approved child support program or a Title 4D under the Social Security Act program, state plan. State plan is the roadmap of what we need to follow and accomplish as a program. In order to have an approved state plan, states must establish guidelines for determining child support. The federal regulations say a child support award, child support obligation, or an amount. And further, a state plan, an approved state child support plan, is a requirement of having an approved state plan for temporary assistance to needy families, or the TANF, the Title 4A program under the Social Security Act. So in order for a state to receive its block grant of public assistance money, a state needs to have a child support program that complies with federal requirements. The guidelines can be established by statute or administrative rule, and they must be reviewed once every 4 years and revised as necessary. Tab 4 and 5 in your binder are the child support guidelines found in 45 Code of Federal Regulations 303.56. And additionally, there is the federal rule that was published in the Federal Register on December 20th, 2016, which significantly revised guideline requirements as well as requirements of what a state must review. Some basic guidelines. The guidelines must be a specific descriptive and numeric criteria and result in a computation of child support obligation. There needs to be a mathematical formula. The child support order must be based on all earnings and income of the obligor and other evidence of ability to pay the child support award. That's a key. The ability to pay is a key phrase that is emphasized throughout the federal requirements. States may also consider the custodial parent's income. The guidelines must also, and this is a new requirement that came out in December, the guidelines must also take into consideration the basic subsistence needs of the obligor or responsible parent who has a limited ability to pay by incorporating a low income adjustment. States may figure out what that low income adjustment is. Some states use a self-support reserve. Income below a certain floor is not counted. Some states tie the self-support reserve to a percentage of federal poverty level. States may also take into consideration similar factors for the custodial parent. If imputation of income is allowed, the guidelines would specify whether that is allowed, it must take into consideration specific circumstances of the obligor, and that would be factors of such as their assets, their resident, where they live, what type of home they maintain, their employment and earnings history, the obligor's education, skill levels, literacy, the age and health, barriers to employment such as criminal history, the availability of employers in the local job market willing to hire a similarly situated obligor. What is the likelihood that someone of a certain literacy, job skill, with certain barriers, what's the likelihood that that individual can be gainfully employed? And if imputing income, also must take into consideration the prevailing wage level in the local community for that occupation level. The guidelines must address how parents will provide for health care through private, public, and/or cash medical support. And the option of public health care is new in the federal requirements. Previously, it was a requirement to provide for private health insurance and/or cash medical support. Also a new requirement in guidelines, states must specify that incarceration may not be considered voluntary or willful unemployment. The final rule published last December is under tab 4. And while this is a very lengthy regulation that addresses many diverse topics specific to the child support or 4D program and not necessarily the private child support cases, there is a significant piece in there that does address the guidelines in both the preamble as well as the revisions to the regulations. We included the entire final rule, because throughout it is also comments that may be on point to the discussions for guidelines. But specifically page 494 through 496 and 515 through 530. So about 20 pages, I think you'll find most useful in providing the philosophy, the thoughts of the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement, and the rationale behind the guideline requirements that they updated in December. Under tab 6, we provide a guideline review report that was completed in October 2016, and that's the most recent one that we have. This was completed by economist Jane Venor of the Center of Policy Research, and that entity is a nonprofit social services research organization that provides insight into many social service areas, including child support. And Dr. Venor is generally considered an expert in child support guidelines. She's completed guideline reviews for actually, I think, the majority of the 54 child support organizations or agencies in the country. Guideline reviews have to have two main components. The first is an economic analysis of the cost of rearing children. And the second element is a case data analysis of deviations from the state formula. Federal requirements are that deviations are kept to a minimum. This will be a challenge. In Dr. Venor's report, she addresses how she dealt with it and why it's a challenge. We have the ability, of course, to capture case data and statistics on the 4D, or the public child support caseload. We do not have the ability to capture any data on the private caseload. That simply doesn't come through us. We never see those. We have no ability to get any statistics on those. So in her report, she did some extrapolating, and she talks about how if this is what the child support case status looks like, this is what, based on what other states experience, this is how it might look in Nevada. But that may be an area that the Guideline Review Committee may need to figure out a solution on how to get a more complete database. New requirements for the guideline review that came out in December, in addition to analyzing the economics of raising children, include an analysis of labor market data by occupation and skill level for the local job market, considering factors such as employment and unemployment rates, the hours worked typically in a particular occupation, an analysis of earnings by occupation. Another new requirement requiring economic analysis is the impact of the guidelines and child support amounts on parents who have family incomes below 200% of federal poverty level. Those requirements for the guideline review are in effect become the compliance state is 1 year after the guidelines are next updated. So we have the set of new guideline requirements, such as incarceration cannot be considered voluntary unemployment. When those are put in place, then the next guideline review after that is the new economic factors. I might be out of line to suggest it because it's not my role, but Dr. Venor's report is probably, as I understand it, sufficient economic analysis to move forward if that's what the group decides. Case data analysis, in addition to deviations, now also will need to include an analysis of the rates of default and the number of cases based on imputed income, the rates of orders using low-income adjustment, the comparison of payments on child support orders by case characteristics. So high earners, low earners, what's the rate that those cases pay their child support, and all the other factors that I mentioned. And again, I'll emphasize that in the federal regulations, the rate of deviations needs to be at a minimum. The review process needs to include an opportunity for public input and specifically input from low-income parents. And the review process also is required under the federal rules to solicit the views and advice of the 4D program. In Dr. Venor's report, it's a 9-part report, and she addresses specifically Nevada's current child support structure, guideline structure, and where she sees our percentages falling in compared to other states, which is pretty much right in line with everybody else. But she also provides a lot of very useful background information in her report, such as the 3 models of determining child support obligations, percentage of obligor income, which only 5 states, including Nevada, use that model, shared income, considering the income of both parents, and the Melson formula, which is a hybrid that only a couple states use. That report also talks about and provides a lot of background information on the different methodologies used for determining the cost of rearing children. She primarily discusses the 2 main options that states use, which is using USDA data and the Rothbarth formula and all those variations. So a lot of good, useful background information. She discusses our presumptive maximum structure and how that relates to other states, and the fact that it's a rather unique concept. And then she also touches on what, at the time that she did her research, was speculation on what the new federal regulations would have in it, which for the most part came to be, such as low-income reserves. So those are 3 reference items that have a lot of information in them to explain the federal requirements and what other states use. Are there any questions for me? Thank you.
This is Nova Murray for the record. The next agenda item would be the committee needs to move forward nominating and electing a chairperson for this committee. Do we have any self-nominations or nominations? I'm assuming anybody could nominate themselves or anyone else.
Keith Pickard for the record. I'd like to nominate Kim Surratt as chairman and Don Throne as vice.
I would second those motions, or one motion, nomination.
Anyone opposed? Nomination moves. Welcome, Chair.
Thanks.
Here's
Can you keep running this meeting?
No. I moved it. I
We should
moved
probably,
the
Ms. Murray, we should
responsibility.
probably take a vote.
Oh, do we take a
vote?
Oh. Nova Murray for the record. I'd like to take a vote of people who are in favor. Please raise your hands. Looks like it's unanimous. Thank you for the vote. Kim Surratt, you are the chairperson, and Don Throne, you are the vice chair. And with that, I turn the next agenda item over to Kim to look at future meeting dates and locations.
All right, well, let's go with inexperience on running something like this. I guess the first comment I would make is there's a lot of materials here for a lot of these committee members that are brand new, and I'm sure you haven't dove into it. I've read every ounce of this already, so I'm a little bit ahead of the game. And a couple members, actually only a couple of us have read it. So in setting forth our meeting dates, I don't know what is standard. I assume there's no rule on how often we have to have them. All right, so I would like some input from the committee about how much time they feel they need to sufficiently go through these materials before we have another meeting Because then once we are rocking and rolling on this, I think we're going to have to be meeting pretty consistently. But the first deadline, I want to be sufficient time for everybody to get a grasp on the materials and what we have to do, because those federal requirements are intense to read and in depth. Any comments or thoughts on that? On how long it'll take you to, I may even go to each one of you, how long you feel you need to get up to date? Oh, come on. Then the next meeting's tomorrow. No? How much, a week, 2 weeks?
How about 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think 2 weeks is probably sufficient too. Okay, so let's set our next meeting 2 weeks out, which will be,
For the record, in the event that this meeting could not be held for the date and time for everybody, I reserved, and I don't know if you want to handle it this way, but I reserved this exact accommodation for Wednesday, August 30th at 1 p.m. In the event we don't use it, I can cancel, but it is there and already reserved.
This is Ryan Songa. The record would be clear if we had a motion on this. It says for possible action on the agenda. And therefore, if we could have a motion and a vote on it, the record would be better.
And this is Michael Roberson. I know that it will be problematic to try to check with everyone's schedules right now, but I can tell you I'm going to be out of the state on August 30th. Doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to have the meeting on that date. I'm just letting you know.
all right, let's have a little bit more discussion about it, and then we'll run a motion on what we should do. August 30th is 3 weeks out instead of 2 weeks out. Maybe if we aim for 2 weeks out, we're looking at, from today, we're looking at August 24th. Before we do a motion on that date, do we have any comments or input from the committee about that date?
Keith Pickard for the record, I'll be out that week.
Tyrone Thompson for the record. That's a IFC meeting for the legislature, so that may not be a good date.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, if I can just interject, I don't know how it's going to work with this committee. I know that legislative committees don't have to follow all the requirements of the open meeting law necessarily during the interim, although we try to. I don't know, I know we have someone from the Attorney General's office here. I don't know whether this, because it's not strictly a legislative meeting, it probably does have to comply with open meeting laws. What I was going to suggest is typically with our other interim committees, we work through LCB staff and they contact, they throw out certain dates to the committee members separately to get an idea of when a good day would work. I don't know if this committee is equipped to do that. I don't know if LCB is equipped to do that. I just proffer that because that's typically how it works rather than the chair trying to figure out which date works for the majority of the people on the committee.
All right.
And I don't know if there's anyone from LCB in your room there or listening that can.
All right, thank you. We do not have anybody here from LCB. We do potentially have staff from, do we have staff from Department of Health and Human Services that can assist with that according to NOVA. So let's do this. Maybe if we have a motion that the goal and the aim is to be between 2 to 3 weeks out on our next meeting, and we'll try to accommodate as many committee members as we can. Obviously, that first meeting after going through the materials is going to be a pretty substantive meeting. So if we need to push it out to between the 3 and 4 week mark, I don't have a problem with that, considering I'd rather everybody be very well read and not coming in here without reading the materials, because this is, that first meeting is going to be a bear. Do we have a consensus there? Anybody want to make a motion on that concept?
This is Judge Rob, so moved.
Hit the mic, I think.
Yeah,
This is Judge Rob, so moved.
Do we have a second?
No, we still have questions.
Okay.
Before you get to that.
Yeah, this is Ryan Songa again. You could, there's several things you could do. You could make a motion to table this, or you could make a motion to do something along the lines of what Mr. Roberson said, and that is to have LCB coordinate it.
I thought I just made that motion.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
That wasn't clear.
Okay, let's state the motion.
The motion was to have staff contact the members of the committee and find a date that is acceptable for the largest amount of the committee, hopefully within 3 to 4 weeks.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Yes.
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 Everybody's yes here.
Okay, I can't tell quite. Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. All right, so the next item on the agenda today is, well, to be clear, we did future meeting date and location. I know we need to discuss a little bit about doing it in this format with teleconferencing from Las Vegas and Carson City versus all being in person. Do we have any comments about that or motions on location?
I don't know if this is Judge Hoskin, just for the record. I don't know that it's feasible from a financial standpoint, but I think especially at that first meeting where we're going through a lot of this heady stuff, I think it would be very beneficial if we could all be in the same room. I just don't know if there's a budget for that or a way to make that happen.
Nova Murray, for the record, we can make it happen.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what was just said.
Nova Murray, for the record, we can make that happen. We do have money budgeted in the event that we need to have travel for the committee.
This is Judge Robb. I agree with Judge Hoskin. I think that first meeting and potentially the meeting where we finalize everything should be in person.
Would you like to make a motion on that? Sorry.
This is Judge Robb. For the record, I move that the next meeting, which would be the organizational meeting, be held face-to-face.
I'll second the motion.
In Las Vegas?
Did you second, Nova?
Yes.
Sorry. Nova Murray seconded the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, anybody opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next agenda item we have is, yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Judge Robb again, I think there's still an issue of who's going to be doing the traveling.
All right, somebody make a motion whether the traveling is to Carson City or to Las Vegas.
Can I
Or
ask
to a rural
question
county. Let me be neutral. Yes,
which would
Judge.
probably make some financial sense. Are there more in the north traveling south or more in the south traveling north from a financial standpoint?
Good question. I have to. It's 8 and 7? 7 in the north? All right, or in the south. Oh, we have 7 in the south and 8 in the north.
Madam Chair, just a Stigler, I don't want to throw a fly in the ointment, but depending on when it's calendared, I may be down in Las Vegas. So I'm agnostic on where it happens.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion on that? Pick a location, any location.
I'll move to hold it in Las Vegas.
I second that motion. Karen Cliff, Clark County DA's office.
Okay, everybody, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, how many in Las Vegas said aye? 1, 2, oh, come on, the glare. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the south said aye. And how many in the north said aye? 1, 2, 2.5. So 3, so 9. Oh, were you Vegas, Nova? That's fine. Okay. All right. The vote is for Las Vegas. The motion passes to hold the meeting in Las Vegas. And then we'll keep dealing with each, after that, I believe when we come back, everybody's reviewed the materials, we have a better concept of the breakdown of our work and what we need to do or not do. We can determine if we're going to do more teleconferencing or meetings up north, et cetera, where they're going to take place after that. All right, the next agenda item is approve Guideline Review Committee goals and objectives. All right, I think we need to solicit some input from the committee on this, and I'll start with some input on this. Obviously, from the presentation from David, we've heard really the breakdown of what the objectives and goals are, the big picture of it, which is bring us into compliance with the federal requirements and modernize our child support guideline calculations while doing so. I would suggest that our breakdown would be twofold. One is the requirements that came out in December of 2016, but also meshing that with the review report from the auditor of the state of Nevada. After that, I think at some point this committee could really break down its goals into more specifics once everybody's read, because I don't know how possibly anybody could really break that down without knowing the different breakout, except for going off of what David provided us, which is a great starter piece for us, but obviously there's some specific items that we're going to have to break out and deal with, such as incarceration of parents, the minimum child support calculation that we have in Nevada, et cetera. But I would say that our goal right now, from my perspective, and I want to hear input from other committee members, is to simply bring us into compliance and modernize our child support guidelines at this time. Do we have any other comments on this?
It's Nova Murray for the record. On page 84 of Jane Benor's Guideline Review Report, she has developed 16 recommendations already that kind of guide us to things that through this guideline review she's noted we should be looking at as a state. We may have to add and subtract from it, but it does give us something to look at. And this agenda item was kind of created so we could banter. It didn't really make you focus on a goal. It was part of the public requirement. So I just wanted to be able to bring this to our attention so that we understood that somebody already put a lot of effort into this, compared a bunch of different states against each other, and kind of gave us a really good starting point.
Any additional comments from the committee?
This is Tyrone Thompson. I agree with everything that's been said. I also would like to recommend that we come up with a date that we'd like to have this completed, and then we can work backwards to determine our timeline instead of just meeting for the sake of meetings, so we can be as efficient as possible.
This is Kim Surratt for the record. Pursuant to AB 278, we have a deadline. Is it July 1st of 2018? It's July. Let me get the exact date so we have it on the record, because I believe it's July 1st. I know it's July for sure. Let me see if it's the actual 1st of the month. July 1st. Yeah, so pursuant to statute, on or before July 1st, 2018, the committee shall review the existing guidelines established in the state for the support of one or more children and provide any recommendations for revisions to the administrator. After that, the administrator has her own duties and obligations as to what to do with those recommendations. So by July 1st, we have to have assessed the audit or guideline review report and the federal the other requirements that we have from the feds for changes and submit a report to her. So the final report has to be in by July 1st. So if we back out of that as to when we need to start having our first draft of that report, and to be kind of on par, I'd say at least a month or two before that. So by May 1st or so, we need to be looking at kind of knowing what's going into that report in order to come to some conclusions on the actual final report. That's a tight timeline considering we're going to be meeting every few weeks or less or more depending on the holiday season, et cetera. So, and collecting public input pursuant to the federal requirement and the requirements of open meeting laws. So in terms of additional deadlines, we could back out of that if anybody has any input on that, on when we want to make certain decisions. I also think that might be a little difficult for this committee to do without reviewing these materials first. But if there's any input on that, please give some more input.
Madam Chair, Keith Pickard for the record. I'd like to know from legal in terms of our open meeting rules, how much time do we need to have the draft out for public review and comment? My concern is if we go to May and we have a 30 or 60-day review, we're now behind schedule. So I was thinking actually like March 1st, have the first draft. That'll give us time. Maybe legal can enlighten us.
Yes, that would be plenty. I mean, absent an emergency, as long as you have it noticed, I believe it's 3 days to get in there. So
Public hearing period.
the public hearing period?
Rather, what's the public inspection period between the time you publish the
I see what you're saying.
proposed to the time, it has to be available for inspection, and then it would have to have a public hearing. What's that
Yeah, I believe
timeframe?
it's 30 days.
So maybe April would give us enough time to make any, my thought is that, I'm sorry, Keith Pickard for the record. If we do April, then we have our first hearing in May. If we have changes we need to make as a result of those public hearings, that would give us till the end of May. We'd have June, and then we'd still have time by July 1.
For the record,
This
Nova
is
Murray.
We'll let Nova go first, then Tyrone, if you could go next. Thank you.
We are in the public meeting process. Right now, the public can join us, and I'm not sure that we need an additional time frame. They're welcome to come to all of the meetings. They can join us by video. They can join us in person. The meeting information is available, so I believe that we're meeting public meeting all along.
This is Tyrone Thompson, and just to piggyback on that, I think that we as a committee, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we do additional outreach because people that this will affect don't normally see these notices. They're not used to seeing these notices. So I think that we as a committee need to make sure that we look at how to do some additional outreach in certain communities because it will affect, and we really should receive that input. So I really think that we need to hone in on that as well. And not just say that for the sake of compliance that we did so, but we really need to do, we need to go a step above.
Keith Pickard for the record. I second that motion. I think we need to get as much external input as we can possibly get. And then, Ms. Murray, with respect to your comment, I agree. We are certainly in the open meeting context today. But before, my understanding under NRS 233B, we're required to publish and post proposed regulations for public comment for 30 days, then a hearing. So that's why I was proposing April 1st as our deadline for that effort.
Nova Murray, for the record, that process will happen when it goes to the admin code. So as we bring it to the administrator, and he makes whatever recommendations he has, that goes into the admin code, and we follow adoption of that regulation through that process, so it will be afforded all of those, the public comment piece.
Perfect, thank you.
I do have a follow-up question on that. So will it be too late by the time it gets to the administrator for the public to come in and if they have some changes to what the administrator does, or should it come before it goes to the administrator? I just want to make sure that we do this in a proper sequence so there's not frustration from the community, because many times communities feel like things are a done deal, and I don't think that we should follow them into that same stream.
Nova Marie, for the record, I think the outreach would help us get there, but it happens all along. And it's all the way through the process to come out of NAC. If for some reason it gets in NAC and the public comment comes up and they disagree with what's happening, it's going to kick back. So we're going to be looking at their comment all the way through the process.
Thank you.
Joe Sanford for the record. I think that there's two pieces where the public comment's going to come. The first public comment piece is going to be while this committee is reviewing the guidelines, and we want to have the public comment while we're creating our recommendation. And then there'll be a second comment period after our recommendation is complete, when the administrator is going to do his piece. But once it leaves this committee and that comment period comes, this committee won't have any input on that. So I think that we need to solicit public comment well before we make our recommendation to the administrator, because then our piece will be over.
Well said. Thank you.
In terms of the public outreach, I'd like this committee to consider that a little bit more, because it's part of our goals and objectives of how we're going to accomplish them. I can say full-heartedly that those notices will at least go out on the family law listserv for the family law section of the State Bar of Nevada. Dawn and I can assure that. I'd love input from the committee, the rest of the committee members right now, about other methods and means to get that public outreach out there so that we can start accomplishing it now before we have our next meeting. Obviously, the public or the private attorneys will be noticed through that means.
I think
This is Tyrone Thompson. Go ahead.
this is Judge Robb. And one of the suggestions I would have is some of our legal service providers have clinics that they give. They could publicize at the clinics and certainly have information in their offices to give to their clientele, which I think meets some of the concern that's been raised, is that we have a broad spectrum of the public who are given notice of this, and that people who wouldn't ordinarily receive these notices, for example, through private counsel, have the ability to get that. I think Washoe Legal, certainly the legal service providers in Clark County, volunteer lawyers, rural Nevada, all of those entities could get to an additional segment of the population that we want to touch.
This is Tyrone Thompson. I think we have to even go a layer further down. We need to go very grassroots and potentially tap into the faith-based community. Huge community, I know, at least here in Southern Nevada, and I'm sure the same in Northern Nevada. Also, we need to go to, like, many of our nonprofit providers, just on those different levels. And if we have the dollars, if we could get to some of the radio stations to do some PSAs and even do some social media outreach.
Keith Pickard for the record. I'll nominate Assemblyman Thompson to be our outreach coordinator.
For the record, I'm an alternate, so I want to get as much in there as possible. It's going to be up to Assemblyman Fumo.
All right,
I get to cause all the damage, then I'm out of here.
We'll let Assemblyman Fumo do
but
it.
I will
then,
help
and
out.
we'll
I
blame
definitely
you.
will.
Poor Assemblyman Fumo. All right, so as the summary right now, we're looking at the Family Law Executive Council listserv. If there's any other listservs that anybody knows about that would be useful that we can tap into, that'd be great. Legal service providers between their clinics and in their offices, faith-based community, nonprofit providers, and PSAs and social media outreach With the PSAs, I believe we wouldn't have to pay for those necessarily if we got them put together or donated, but any other input on our Guideline Review Committee goals and objectives? Now, it does say for
Karen
possible
Cliff.
action. I don't know if we need an actual motion on that, but
Karen Cliff on behalf of the Clark County District Attorney's Office. I believe we can commit to also assisting with the outreach in terms of allowing our community partners to be aware. But we're working on this as well as, you know, our clients that come through the front lobby, the courts, et cetera. Thank you.
do any other counties have input like that too?
Kathleen Baker from Washoe County. I can see that we can probably work with clients who come to our front desk as well and provide them with this information.
Nova Murray, for the record, we can have the state offices do the same, and we can solicit information to our partners in the counties to do the same.
Joe Sanford for the record, and Churchill County will be doing the same in its area. I'm happy to have contact with the other rural counties to let them know, as well as with the administrator's office.
Can we have legal tell us, do I have to have an actual motion on our, because Nova was saying that approving our committee goals and objectives was a requirement for this meeting. Do we need an actual motion on that?
You could do a motion to table until the next one, or to continue it. If you want to address it, you're going to address it later, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Somebody make that motion, please.
This is Judge Rob,
moved.
so moved.
Keith Pickard, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Our next agenda item is to approve future agenda items for possible action. I would propose, obviously, the homework in between now and the next time is the reading of the materials, and that our future agenda items would be the item that we just tabled, which will be breaking down the materials that we're reading and figuring out a more finite timeline for dealing with each of the topics that we need to address and determine what those topics are and what the big picture topics are, so we can move through some kind of a systematic approach to the changes instead of just I want to change Nevada child support approach. Does anybody else have any comment on future agenda items for the very next meeting? There being none, I believe that, I don't believe that needs a motion unless we need to table that one also. We don't. How about we do this? Don't we need a motion to make our next agenda items be the tabled item and creating a schedule and a plan of, break down a plan of topics, child support topics to address and when? Motion.
Judge Rob, so moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion passes.
For the record, Nova Murray, we have the staff to take care of this.
Okay.
So our staff will facilitate whatever's needed to get the public documents here for anybody in the public, add things to our binders, create the agendas, post them for public. We'll do all of those pieces out of our side, and we will help to work with LCB to get the meeting rooms coordinated as needed based on the research that LCB is gonna do for us. So,
And that includes creating minutes off of this meeting, correct?
yes, my staff, Nova Murray, for the record, my staff are currently creating meeting notes.
Okay, so we made a motion to select a chair and vice chair. Is there any need for any other positions at this time based on what your staff's going to be doing, we don't need anybody to coordinate with them on that, correct? Other than legal may need to answer that. I just want to make sure we're in compliance there.
I
We
think we're
don't
good as of
need,
right now.
meaning we don't need a secretary, right?
No.
Okay.
No, in fact, the only thing that was on the agenda was the chair, and therefore you couldn't do that even if you wanted to, because it wasn't noticed.
Okay. Beautiful. I love it. All right. So the last one is to take public commented, public comment, and allow anybody in the South, if there is anybody that wants to provide public comment. I just see a wave of a hand, nobody coming to the table. Anybody in the North that would like to provide public comment? All right. I have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you real soon after you've done lots and lots of homework and reading. And I just throw out there real quick, if you didn't get the materials, let Nova know. Okay. Thank you.